Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 377, and I had a conversation with Colonel Rich Kniseley. Colonel Kniseley is in the United States Space Force. He serves as the Senior Materiel Leader for the Commercial Space Office within Space Systems Command, one of 3 Space Force field commands. That is a mouthful, I know. We chatted about what his role is within Space Force, what Space Force is, and I asked him all about what's going on up there. I was super curious about a bazillion things. I could have asked him all-day questions, but he was super generous with his time, and I think you're going to really enjoy this. I don't know about you, but I certainly did not know very much about Space Force, and so this was really helpful. Check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors. Follow Susan Ruthism and Hey Human Podcast on social media. Find my albums on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your music. You can look for my albums All I Ever Wanted Was Everything, Surfacing to Breathe, and How to Say Goodbye. They are everywhere. Check out my relationships and sex show with sexologist and healthcare practitioner Mara Edelman on YouTube called Are We There Yet Podcast Show. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, be love. Live long and prosper. All right, here we go. Colonel Kniseley, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you for having me, Susan. It's great to actually see you again.
I'm really excited. We met on an airplane. You were sitting across from me in uniform, and I looked over and I thought, I think that's Air Force, but I'm not sure. And I looked at the patch on your insignia and I thought, is that? Oh my God, Space Force! What? I was so excited. So I really appreciate that you were so kind and talked to me and told me how to get a hold of you for an interview.
No, I was glad it worked out, and it's actually really cool to see your genuine interest in it, and it looked like you had 1,000 questions. Just one of those awesome opportunities that a Space Force Guardian can reach out and just answer any questions you have, and anything about the Space Force or what we're doing in general. It's something really cool and important that the public needs to know.
Absolutely. Well, let's start a little bit with you personally. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? What got you interested in the military?
Ooh, man. All right. So I'm what you call a military brat. So my father is a retired colonel in the Air Force. Wow. I have not known anything but the military in my entire life. So I was born into the military, and we made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 moves as a kid. And, I just saw how the military was taking care of my father and, all the cool experiences that he had leading people and how they really responded to him as a leader. My father was one of those people leaders. And one of the things he always taught me was if your people are happy, the work will get done. I saw how they responded to him, and even when I was in high school, I did what they call junior ROTC, which is taking military classes as a high school kid. So you learn how to use the uniform, or wear the uniform, and do drill and ceremonies, and learn customs and courtesies. Just kind of decided, this is something I'm really interested in. Went to college out at Colorado State and took ROTC there. And I commissioned into the Air Force in 2000. It's kind of funny to say that I spent 21 years in the Air Force, and then I moved over to the Space Force, and I've been here for about 2 years now.
That must have been quite a thing to wrap your head around. Did you grow up being interested in space exploration, or even just the perimeter of the Earth and what's going on there?
So my father was a space operator, so he was one of those men and women that control the satellites from the ground. He also commanded one of our sites out in Hawaii, and so I've actually grown up around space as I was growing up. It's actually kind of just really cool how I came into the military as a space acquisition professional, which is a program manager. The first program I worked on was a survivor radio that communicated with satellites, as well as, point to point between the radio and the rescue helicopter. So most of my career has been in space as a acquisition person, and I've done time working with Congress as a legislative liaison. I've had the fortune of commanding twice and deploying, and it's just what I've grown up in. So when the Space Force came into our world in 2019, just was a natural fit for me to raise my hand and come over as a Space Force Guardian.
Is that mostly where they got people, was Air Force into Space Force?
The original group, yes, were mostly Air Force folks, but what we've been doing now is having a number of what we're calling inter-service transfers. So people from the Army, the Navy, the Marines, who are doing space jobs within their respective services, or there were some that just really wanted to become a part of the space mission, raised their hand and cross-commissioned into the Space Force. So we've been doing that for the past couple of years now, having a good amount of those inter-service transfers. And it's been really cool to have them over because you're getting new ideas of how to do things. It's also really kind of reinvigorating the culture, and it's just really exciting.
When you speak of acquisitions, do you mean the real estate of space, in that the place you put a satellite?
No, when I talk about space acquisitions, and it's actually the primary mission of Space Systems Command, which is the larger organization that I'm a part of. Our mission is to develop, field, launch, and sustain space capabilities, and provide those capabilities out to our respective warfighters downrange. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit later on about just the importance of space, but that's really what I do as an acquisition officer, is to manage the budget that, the taxpayers trust us with, because it's taxpayer money. But what we're doing is managing programs and providing capability out to the warfighter. So when I'm talking about acquisitions, it could be developing a satellite. It could be developing a user equipment that utilizes space capabilities. It could also be developing the ground architecture, those command and control elements that control all the satellites and stuff. So the whole space architecture has many different facets, but that's really what I'm trying to do as an acquisition officer.
I'm curious to know what space means to you, because I think about what we know of space, what we know of what's just beyond Earth, what's then the next step as you move out. Also, what about quantum physics and what space means for quantum physics? So how do y'all wrap your duties around that?
So you bring up the whole space environment is just very multifaceted right now. But one of the reasons that we actually stood up the Space Force was just to really raise the importance of space. I think a lot of people don't realize how integrated we are in our daily lives with space capabilities. I mean, I would imagine you have an iPhone, an Android,
this
something
conversation.
like that. Exactly. So, you turn on your phone, you turn on your Google Maps or Apple Maps, and that's powered by the GPS constellation. And that is one of our most prized constellations that is, more or less powered by the Space Force. So, we've been operating that constellation successfully for a number of years, but it's also communications, it's weather, it's, missile warning and missile track. When you hear about China launching hypersonic glide missiles, it's our capabilities that are tracking these and ensuring that it does not harm any people or any of our allies. So when we stood up the Space Force, we pretty much were declaring that, hey, this This is a very prized domain. It's also a very contested domain. There's a lot of activity out there, but if you think about space, it's very unique in that there are no dividing lines. It is government, industry, academia, allies, we're all operating in the same environment together. So it's very important that we preserve that freedom of movement within space, because all walks of life are very dependent on this domain right now.
I've seen the map of stuff floating around out there, and it seems pretty crowded.
Yes, it is getting more crowded. I'm sure you could even go on the internet to see just how many launches many different countries are doing right now. I think each year I hear from our launch professionals, both on the eastern and western range, that they've now broken a new annual record for launches, because our launch ranges, we're not just launching just national security space missions. SpaceX is launching all their commercial missions for the most part on the eastern and western range. You've seen a huge number of small launch companies come into play. It's just amazing how people are really utilizing space to, create new capabilities, new technologies. The work that NASA's doing right now with the James Webb Telescope, taking pictures just of the farthest reaches of Earth and seeing the potentials of like new life and new planets to live on. It's just incredible to talk about right now.
And what about the space between the space? What about the quantum level?
You're probably asking the wrong person on that. I will be the first to admit that I am a program manager by heart, and I have a number of really smart people that work for me who could probably talk more at that molecular level and everything. But one thing I will say, for a while, we were just kind of operating on like the what we call the geo orbit, but now we're looking at cislunar, and we're looking at ways that we can utilize that further orbit, and it just goes out further than that. So as we're developing new launch vehicles, able to get out to those further reaches, and start putting satellites and sensors, and just really understanding what's going on out there.
You mentioned SpaceX. I know that they are seeking to have a moon base, and there's all sorts of reasons why that might be a potential interesting situation. I imagine that at some point we will have jumped the shark of capabilities of getting minerals and precious metals from this planet. And obviously there's a whole lot out there on the moon, on Mars, potentially, all these things. Is that part of also, when you talk about acquisition, is that also part of it? Or is it really more about defense for Space Force and keeping an eye on privatized space, that they don't overstep or even get in their own melees while out there? If China wants to throw something out on the moon to harvest, I'm just using the moon as an example, but then how do y'all step in for that?
Well, exactly. So, there's a couple of things there. So one, our primary mission right now is, national defense and defense of our allies, providing space capability, for our nation's warfighter. That being said, we have incredible partnerships with NASA, and we're working together on many different projects. I actually stood up an office on how do we best utilize the space that you have in a rocket fairing, the big cone. We were many times just launching single satellites, and there was so much more space that we could have just packed more capability into. So I stood up an office that reached out to all those different other agencies that had capability on the ground and said, hey, if you're going to be ready on this at this time, almost like a bus rider, I've got a ride for you. And one of my first launches was actually launching a payload working with a NASA organization. And I was actually fortunate to do one of the first military integrations onto a NASA launch too. So it's just really refreshing to see the partnership between both defense as well as science and technology. So we're working together on those different aspects. Now, when you're talking about exploration of the moon and everything, that's very much a NASA mission, but we are working together to ensure that near peer adversaries such as a China or a Russia does not get that advantage, if you will, to take over a moon or something to that.
Well, what about a privatized, though, for an Elon Musk who wants to put a base there? And I mean, to your point, before I get to that question, though, I just have to make I love that NASA teaches everyone how to pack for space. That there's if you've ever seen, I'm sure, what goes on a Mars rover. That's amazing. All the things that are on the rover in such a small amount of space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Engineers.
Yeah. That's why things take a long time to get up there. They are doing painstaking detail, because what a lot of people don't understand is the atmosphere of space and the physics and everything that goes on, even just launching something. And when you're thinking about shock and vibe and some of the hottest and coldest temperatures that you can go through, there's a lot of what we kind of call mission assurance that goes into play to ensure that payload will actually make it to the right orbit and then at that same time do the job that it's supposed to do. A lot of people in the space world, say that space is hard and, but there's just so many different variables to it.
Back to what you said earlier, that so much of our life is reliant on these satellites doing their jobs, and somebody has to put them up there. The technology, not even just our safety, which is obviously a concern, but then there's counterterrorism for computers and the things that we know about that operate our daily life, but we don't think about at all. How do you convince a populace who some don't even believe we went to the moon? How do you explain to people who really don't understand space in general, don't understand why we would need those technologies there, why we would spend these humongous budgets to do the things that are being done? How do you, aside from talking to people like me who try and get the word out, but how do you let people understand or lead people down that path of understanding?
I think you actually just kind of hit the nail on the head. It's on us to have more interaction with the general public and everything. So, one of the hurdles that we had to get over with, the Space Force was, obviously showing that this is a no kidding, a vital mission to our way of life, but also, when the Netflix series came out, obviously we had to clear that hurdle to show no, I cannot explain a service that is operating daily as much as the Space Force. Our satellites don't stop. Our technology doesn't stop. I mean, with the Air Force, planes, pilots, they take breaks and everything, and they're doing great missions and stuff. But our operators are there 24/7. Those satellites are running 24/7. The ground systems are running 24/7. And the missions that our other operators, whether it be the Air Force, Army, and Navy, they are relying on these capabilities to be there at any given point. I mean, think about a naval ship at sea. Obviously, that sun goes down and, that GPS that it has, that's how it's getting from point A to point B and ensuring that it's not going to hit something in the water in the darkness. Also be able to communicate between boats, between land. That is all done through space. And, it's just really exciting to talk about, but I think the Space Force is doing a great job about, getting out there. Also, just outreach with young people, just like getting involved in the schools, STEM programs. It's really starting to invigorate, getting people really excited about math, about science, about engineering. When you start talking about these missions, and I don't want to sound like Whitney Houston and say that, the children are our future or anything like that. But, these are the folks that are going to take us to the next level for sure. In my office, in the commercial space office, we have increased our industry days by, I would say well over 200%. And that's just talking to industry. But one of the other things that I do is I go to a number of different speaking engagements out in the community, whether it be folks like yourself, members of industry, academia, members of Congress, because they need to understand it. We need to advocate for that money and help them understand that money is going towards vital interests for us. So I think, kind of a long-winded answer is to get out there into the community, talk to folks, and show them the mission and kind of explain to them how integrated space really is in everything that we do.
How much of what you do, and by you I mean the royal you of Space Force, is safety protocol, is protecting the populace versus potentiality, meaning the real problem versus potential threat problem?
As a service, we're always looking ahead. One of the great things that our Secretary of the Air Force and even our Chief of Space Operations has kind of put on us is that we have to innovate. Kind of giving you a history lesson. I mean, obviously, the U.S., we used to be the only people in space for the big majority. Obviously, you had the race to space between the U.S. and Russia. The majority of the space assets were U.S. assets. But now we do have near peer adversaries such as China and Russia who have, increased their capabilities, making us needing to go faster, which we need to be smarter with how we buy things, with how fast we can get stuff out to the warfighter, meaning not build everything in-house through the Space Force, but go out into the commercial industry, seeing how we can take their capabilities and when I say not take, but buy their services and integrate them into our space enterprise. At that same time, our allies are doing amazing things in space too, and it's helping us work better together, knowing that each of our assets will be there for each other. So it's been really good from a teamwork aspect. We are still very focused on the now, but we are equally as focused on what's out there. And one thing that we do like to tell the public is that, those near peer adversaries, they're still going full steam, and we need to be ready for potential conflict. So what we're doing is getting ready for something like that and to ensure that our way of life will still be maintained.
That's a lot to unpack, right? It's a lot to unpack. As a human being, it breaks my heart to think about the fact that as we move off planet, it does that we take all our problems with us, that we take the adversarial stance instead of, for example, the space station, which is a community stance. It bums me out in frank terms. It's a real bummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say as far as the military service, I'm not, my focus is not on adversarial. I think where my head is at is to more or less preserve. So when I think about, I want to make sure that you are able to enjoy the space technology that's out there and to live your lives and everything. So, when I joined the military, it was more like, I would have probably joined a different service if I was more that rah-rah gung-ho and, all that stuff.
I'm more Marines.
Yeah, exactly. And believe me, I met with all of them when I was coming out of high school, and I'm like, yep, I'm not going to do that. I think it's just more of the human aspect of things, where it's, there's just so much wonder and amazement in space that we need. It's on us as a Space Force to maintain the ability to, keep performing that exploration and to do that. But in order to do that, we need to be able to support what could potentially happen.
Yeah, I think if all the countries came together with their best and their brightest, it's just the potential of what that could be. But I know that's not the real world. It's just, that's the part that frustrates me, is that we do have to think in terms of protecting and all that. And I get that. And to me, I think the great irony is people have really no true idea about what's happening to keep them safe on a daily basis. But if TikTok goes down for 20 minutes or Instagram goes down, all hell breaks loose, right?
Yeah,
that's a shot heard around the world.
Yeah, exactly. And from a space standpoint, someone lost their DirecTV. Here we go. So, yeah. No, you're exactly right. Now, one thing it's been allowed for us to do now that we do have the Space Force is to kind of have more of those conversations of what some of those other countries are doing. Like you were talking about cyber, cyber attacks are probably one of the cheapest and most effective ways to do harm. And I'm sure you could turn on the news and hear about, cyber hacks on banks and, other necessary assets. When we're putting up space capabilities, that's one thing that we definitely look at is what we call cybersecurity, ensuring that no nefarious actors can break into those networks, so that we can make sure that the data that are coming back and down through many different communication channels and data paths are actual true data and that hasn't been tampered with. So we're definitely keen on what's going on in the ground, not to mention what's going on up in the sky.
I get 20 emails a day from Nigerian princes who want to make me a millionaire, so I get it.
Yeah. Just don't click that link.
No, do not click that link. Let's talk asteroids. There was talk in the news, of course, recently, and it makes me laugh because the clickbait is we narrowly missed Earth. We almost got obliterated by an asteroid, blah, blah, blah. And then you look and it's the distance to the moon times 12 or something. And I think, I guess apples and oranges, it's close in some regard, but how much of our satellite is protecting us from those sorts of intrusions?
Our satellites aren't really focused on that. Now, that being said, NASA, and I can't remember when they launched last, has a program called DART. And what DART was doing was to basically land on an asteroid and to start, thinking about what that looks like. Not to sound like the movie Armageddon or anything like that, but NASA has looked into that mission of what that would look like, and if anything, also drill on those asteroids and look at some of those minerals and stuff. But that's one of the missions that NASA's been looking at, where our satellites are more focused supporting missions on Earth and the defense and everything. But our capabilities that we're producing right now are not really focused on asteroids.
What about things like, and I'm pulling out stuff just randomly, but what about things like weapons that are focused to a particular focal point, or a sonic weapon? Are there ways to protect against that sort of thing, or any heads up that satellites prepare us for? Assuming that we're talking mostly about satellites here for what the program is all about, and not further off world than that.
Yeah, no. So our one of our major constellations when we're thinking about protecting folks is our missile warning and missile track constellation. The majority of that is powered by a satellite called Sibers. That constellation has 6 satellites up there right now. Actually, we just launched our last Sibers satellite just this past year, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But now we're working on the next generation of that architecture. It's called Next Gen Geo. So we're working on the next 2 satellites that we're going to launch into Geo. We're working on launching other ones that go into a different orbit called Polar. And then we're also working with partnership with the Space Development Agency, who actually just launched their first satellites of what we're calling tranches. And these are smaller satellites that are going to be in the LEO orbit, which is the orbit closest to the Earth. They're going to be launching many of those with a constant replenishment rate. So from a missile warning and missile track standpoint, we're actually doing very well with that, and to counteract any issues where you maybe have seen through China or North Korea or anything like that. So we're doing really well there, but also a lot of our satellites are protected from, if there was going to be a nuclear blast in space, a lot of our assets are protected against that. So if something were to happen, they would be able to survive something like that and be able to still function and support our troops on the ground.
I imagine they're built to withstand radiation to a certain extent anyway, right? I mean, obviously, it's where they are. And I also assume that as the technology improves, you're getting smaller and smarter with it.
Oh, that is absolutely what we're doing. Our service acquisition executive, Honorable Frank Calvelli, he's actually said we are done with these long-term builds that have taken, 10 years and everything. Things should be getting out there faster, shorter contracts so that we can allow innovation. It's actually been really refreshing. I still consider myself somewhat young, that it's like, okay, good. We're getting into a new mindset here of getting things out there faster, not waiting for the 100% solution, because what I always like to say is 60% of something is 100% better than nothing. So get something out there right away, and then you have time in the background to innovate on it and stuff. Or better yet, get it out there, shake, rattle, and roll it, make sure it's working, but also, talk to the warfighter, talk to our allies, talk to all these folks and say, okay, what else could we do differently and stuff. So it's a constant communication instead of throwing it out there and then now you're waiting 10 more years to get the next best thing.
Yeah, pretty soon it'll just be Apple Watch size satellites.
I want to see a constellation of air tags all over the place. It'd be kind of cool.
There you go. I would be remiss if I didn't ask. Obviously, in the news lately have been a lot of talk about machines that are flitting about that are of quote unquote unknown origin or capability. So if we have all these satellites out there, how are we not, maybe we are, and I know you probably, if we are, you're not about to say it, but you understand where I'm going with the question. Where is that stuff? And why are we not seeing it on the satellites? If it blips in and blips out, is it there? What does it mean? How do we wrap our heads around that? If we're thinking about protecting ourselves from China, are they malevolent? Are they benevolent? There's a lot to unpack with that one as well.
I would say what we are doing right now is we're keeping an eye on everything that is going on in space right now. To kind of get to your question, it's probably above my pay grade, any of that stuff. I'm not privy to any of it, but what I would say as far as the Space Force goes is that there is no better force out there that is doing right with space and is really just got their eye on the ball of, seeing everything that is going on there right now so that, more or less everybody can, sleep well at night and just continue on with their lives and just really keep utilizing just a lot of the capabilities that are out there.
I imagine things get thwarted left and right that the general public never hears about. And there is this, that's the other frustrating thing is, people scream and shout about, I think that teachers should be paid more, absolutely. But I do think that we have to have a well-maintained military because things happen that there's a reason we don't know. If we did, we would all be running around needing Prozac every 5 seconds, right?
I agree. Having lived that Washington life for a while, whoever has to balance a budget out there, deserves like a gold star, because I like to, I even tell my family all the time, it's like there's just so many mouths to feed. And it's just a juggling act of it's exactly what you said. We need to have a modernized, strong military, but at that same time, we need to ensure that our children are growing up and getting the proper education that they need. We need to make sure that roads are maintained. We need to make sure that we have, law enforcement and just everything out there. It's just really tough as far as the military goes. That's why we need to do the smart thing with those dollars. My commander, Lieutenant General Mike Gutlein, he's actually got his head in the right direction of what he likes to call exploit by build. And the build stuff is the stuff that we've been doing for years. It's the big satellites. It's the 8 to 10 year developments and everything. I mean, these are exquisite capabilities, but in order to go faster, we need to kind of start pivoting away from that and start really taking into account what is the commercial industry offering, what are our international allies offering, so that we can just buy that stuff and integrate it. If it's already available, we should be buying it because we could get it out there tomorrow. And then when you think about exploit, we're starting to utilize our own capabilities in ways that they weren't even intended, because A, we can, but B, it helps us stay ahead of the threat. And then it's also, we have the ability to share data that's just hitting the cutting room floor and proliferating it to our partners so that they don't have to do the same thing on their own. So it's a really refreshing mindset of having to go faster, to be more innovative. Our Space Systems Command, we have a number of different initiatives to also tap into the intellect and the innovation of our own workforce. We have offered up programs to say, hey, if you come with your great idea, and if it makes sense, we're going to find some money to fund it, because it's a great idea, and we're going to get that out there to the warfighters. So we've actually had a number of really cool initiatives. It's really sparked something with the workforce, which is it's just exciting.
Yeah. Do privatized space groups share their toys? When something really innovative happens, do they let y'all know, and vice versa, so that you can work together, assuming they're allies?
Oh, absolutely. Part of my job as leading the commercial space office is I meet with industry all the time. I think I already had 5 meetings today alone just to see what each industry partner's doing. And it's all across the board too. It could be how to fuse data together, where you were going, all the way from doing mobility and logistics in the sky. One thing that we're looking at right now in the Space Force is possibly repairing satellites in the sky, having modules do that, refueling our capabilities with gas, almost like a gas station in the sky, moving things down so it enters the Earth's atmosphere faster. There's a lot of stuff, as well as doing the right thing for the space environment, which is also cleaning up orbital debris and making it a little bit cleaner.
I was just going to ask that question. Yeah.
Our group called SpaceWorks, which is a very innovative group, actually awarded a number of different contracts looking all at orbital debris. And it's really cool when I see these satellite companies saying, well, hey, when it's deorbiting, I can, more or less deploy an umbrella and drag a bunch of that trash down with me and everything. So, and then it burns up in the Earth's atmosphere. There's a lot less clutter up there, because what that clutter is going to do is now it's going to start damaging satellites. And, more or less, when you're talking about bringing our problems up into space, I would say as far as a race, we have not exactly been the cleanest of the group. I think it's something, if we start the behavior now, I think it'll benefit us down the line.
I have another question about AI capability. The idea that an AI machine learning, quickly learning device to go up and be almost like a mechanic or a lineman in the sky to fix these things. Is that something that is also being worked on?
We're definitely looking at that technology. In fact, we held a industry event just this past May with the help of Microsoft, and the whole event was all about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we invited a bunch of industry there to, talk about the benefits of AI. While at that same time talking about, how do we set the right guardrails to ensure that you're really bounding the technology so that it doesn't, go out and, take over where it's not supposed to. So I know that the right people are in the discussions right now, but the one thing I would say about AI is, I'm very positive probably our near peer adversaries are utilizing it. So I think it's something that we need to really wrap our heads around it and figure out the best ways to employ it. One way that AI is just super beneficial is that you could utilize this technology to do a lot of I don't want to say the meaningless tasks, but there's artificial intelligence capabilities that could write an entire contract for you, where it takes our people maybe, let's just say 3 days to input it into the system. This AI technology could write it for you in the span of seconds, and then you could have a human in the loop read it and make sure that it makes complete sense. So there's just so many different ways that it can make our lives easier, but I would say that there's still work that needs to be done.
Yeah, as a creative, it's a slippery slope. I can see it in science and technology, yes, but in the creative realm for paintings and songwriting and movie writing, keep your AI paws off my work.
Well, at that same time, me that has a young kid, I have to ensure that he's not chat GPTing his report, and he's actually learning the material and stuff. So it's added a challenge as a parent. As a military member, I definitely see the utility in it.
There's always a catch-22.
There is. There's
always a catch-22. Could you tell everybody how they can learn more about what you do and about Space Force and about the command center and all of that? Is there a good central place for them to go and scoot around and find out more information?
Absolutely. So my recommendation, because I'm just so bad with websites, is to Google the United States Space Force, and I know they have a public website that you can you can learn about the mission of the Space Force and also the history of it. It's weird that we stood up in December of 2019, but there's just so much that's already happened in the close to 4 years that it's been around. Just as a personal plug, also Google the Space Systems Command. One thing I will say is under the Space Force, there are 3 field commands, which is our major commands. Space Operations Command, which are the folks that do the organized, train, and equip for all of the operators, but also the operations of the satellites and the ground equipment. STARCOM, which is focused on training and testing and writing doctrine and techniques, tactics, and procedures. For the Major Acquisition Space Systems Command, look at all the missions that we do, whether it be development, fielding, launching. I mean, there's nothing more cool than a launch. If you've ever been to Vandenberg or Patrick or Cape Canaveral, just to see those big rockets or small rockets go up, really cool. But also, we're doing amazing things with sustainment and ensuring that when we launch something and it gets into its orbit, that we're able to maintain it and keep it going.
Your recruitment centers must be fascinating.
Oh, yeah, and that's all part of STARCOM, and it's really getting out there. In fact, we just had the Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force visit us just this week, and I just learned that Space Force is now going to have its own honor guards. So, when you think about the folks going out and into the football games and displaying the flags, but also military ceremonies like funerals and stuff to really pay honor to those members. It's just really important to have and to bring importance to the force.
Now, if a being touched down in you have kids, so you probably aren't going to do this. I know what my answer is. But if a being touched down and said, "Come, we're going to take you deep space. You can explore everywhere," would you go?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I've been watching all these videos on all this space travel and space exploration and everything, and I'll tell you, I have done a lot of crazy things in my time, and I will probably, if the opportunity comes, I'll add that to my mix. So absolutely, I will go out there, and I think it'd just be an incredible experience.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in orbiting the planet. I want to go full on Star Trek, deep space, the Prime Directive. Sign me up.
Keep watching some of these companies because they are very, just the excitement of going back to the moon. That's huge. Human space exploration is back. I mean, we're going to have SpaceX has gotten out to the space station a couple of times. I know the United Launch Alliance is going out there. I think everybody it's just an exciting time for space right now.
Yeah, let's hope it unifies people a little more.
Now, one thing I would say, just as kind of a, and I hate to consider myself an old guy in the military, but I'm going to right now. It's been really awesome watching our junior force take on more responsibilities. I remember when I first got in, you were handled with kid gloves and, you're not quite old enough to make coffee, so you could go fill the cream and everything. But I've been working with some very young company grade officers, and, in military speak, those are the lieutenants and captains. And I personally have been excited just to say, what, hands off. You go run this. Let me know what you need from me. And just seeing that the results that they're bringing back, it just brings such a smile to my face. And I think, as we build the Space Force and we, continue the momentum of excitement that we have, as we're bringing in all of this talent, I have great confidence in where everything is going to go. And one more thing to your point, I would say the cooperation between the United States and its allies is at an all-time high with regards to space right now. I mean, at Space Systems Command, we host a number of different countries, the United Kingdom, the Australians. I'm meeting with the Japanese next week. The Dutch have come. It's been really cool to see how they want to get involved and just work together across. And we have an amazing international affairs office here that's just doing just amazing work, bridging these partnerships. So I would definitely say, as far as the United States and its allies, the cooperation with regards to the space domain is you're in good hands.
It's exciting. It's really exciting.
It is.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. You were really gracious about it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I was glad that we were able to make it happen. I was actually, I was pinging our public affairs team. I was like, is it going to happen? Because she was so cool to talk to. So no, it was great.
I'm really excited about getting this out for my listeners, which, by the way, thank you for listening, everybody. And thank you. And keep in touch. If there's something exciting you want to talk about, you have an open door always. And if you got a physicist running around back there, send them my way.
Awesome. No, it was great talking to you. And, thank you to your listeners for taking interest. And, it'd be kind of cool to do it again sometime.
Hey, thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.